Welcome. What a wonderful weekend it was. We received so many emails, and I really want today to be a celebration, a rejoicing. What is, is. We don't make what is true, it is. This deep, deep place, perhaps deeper than we might ever imagine until we realize what is. A place that stands inviolate, imperturbable, immutable, impenetrable. The light is the light, and there is nothing that competes with it. God is good, and there is nothing that opposes it. This is reality, the reality that you can know through the acceptance, the claiming, being what it is that is, which is why we spend so much time in the recognition of awareness as what I am. But to honor those who have taken that step, we're rising higher. We were brought to tears of absolute joy to hear the recognition of what is so clearly seen, known. And so we will, and so we are. And we'll spend the next possibly 2 weeks on one of our most profound chapters that really speaks to the knowing of oneness and the living of oneness, the integrity of thy word. I am that I am is not just an empty promise. God is all are not empty words. And we're not here to be anything but authentic and real in the knowing of what is. There are plenty, more than not, who are filled with empty words. But to genuinely know, genuinely, authentically real, as we like to say, know what is, to know thyself, is to know the kingdom of heaven, is to have in my hands the tangible riches of the kingdom of heaven. How could we want anything less? And there is nothing else, as it happens. So I invite you to rest back in the knowing. Living is not resting. Living is living. Living is being fully what I am. Being the liberated, joyous, complete, whole being that I am. That is self-effulgence. So we'll crack on, and it may take a couple of weeks to get through this chapter, as I said, but that doesn't matter. This will inspire conversation, perhaps reset our understanding of what truth actually is. And that's the whole point of the world. When we know, and we are awake from the world. And everything about the world is a classroom that's simply pointing us to know the truth, to graduate that classroom, to graduate into a new day that is living heavenly, living freely, living wholeness, living completeness. This chapter is titled Body, the Temple of the Living God. Where is this body that consists of living, conscious mind? Right here. Nowhere else. Right here. Nowhere else. It's always been right here, where I am. Nearer than breath and closer than hands and feet. Always. It's not buried in the desert. It's not in an uncharted room in the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's not buried somewhere. It's not at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It's not in the vast recesses of space. Right here. It's always been right here, where I am, as I am, where a created body seems to be. It is true that it does not appear to be visible until we can see. All right. Why? Because the fraudulent mirage seems to conceal it. It appears that a mist, mistaken sense of body, covers it, hiding it with a capital I from view. But never mind. This body can be seen and is seen by the eye that is single. Let's hear that again so that we can know, so that you can know genuinely the depth of complete contemplation. This body can be seen and is seen by the eye, your eye, that is single, in absoluteness. It is seen by the undivided, inseparable vision that is spirit, consciousness. But you may ask, how do we know that this body actually exists if we do not actually see it? Suppose we are not illumined. Suppose we do not yet see with the single eye. Have we any way of knowing that the eternal perfect body does exist right here and now as this body? Of course. Intelligence being the very fact, essence, currency of reality, of course I am to know. And I know. Indeed, there is a way in which we can be assured that this eternal perfect body does exist. And this way of knowing is literally fraught with power, literally, tangibly. Let us perceive the way in which this body can be apparent in all its glory. Beloved, let us seem to descend for a moment in order that we may ascend to ever greater heights of spiritual perception. We know that there is something right here where this appearance of solidity called the body is so apparent. We know that this right here is no vacuum. We know there is life here because obviously there is activity. Life is activity. And without life, there could be no activity. Thus, there could be no doubt that there is life right here where this false covering seems to be. Agreed. There is. We know I am. Absolutely, we know this to be true. You do know what you are, you just don't realize what you are not. And in masterful discernment, the self-effulgence that is life living is apparent, is obvious. Now, life, in order to fulfill its purpose in being life, has to be alive and is to be alive as the life of a living substance. We know that we are conscious and that we are conscious of being right here where life is. Let's not move on without validating this. We aren't interested in just accumulating more information, which is empty. There are enough parrots in the world copying words that are meaningless to them, and that is not the purpose of our work here, but to know genuinely, fully embodied. This being true, the consciousness we are does exist right here and now, right where the life we are is evident as activity. Consciousness is inseparable from life. Consciousness is substance, as well as supply, as well as activity. The living substance which is alive right here and now is this glorious body that seems to be concealed at the moment. But it isn't really. We know that neither life nor consciousness can ever be entered or have been born into this body because it consists of living consciousness. Another name for consciousness is soul. soul being the substance of this body, it could not possibly enter the substance that it is. Perhaps that lands. Nor could it depart from the substance that it is. It is what it is. Is, is. We know that life, consciousness, mind, intelligence, love are one inseparable, integral entirety. So we know that this body is comprised of mind or intelligence and love, as well as consisting of living consciousness. The body of the universe, without a circumference, consists of life, mind, consciousness, love. This body right here consists of life, mind, consciousness, love. The universal body is the specific body, and the specific body is the universal body. One. There's not God is all, and here's this little life happening that somehow doesn't seem to align with what truth is. Not possible. Not possible. Nicodemus was a wonderful parable in the Bible about defending nonsense. It is only in disrobing, it is only in absolute surrender of everything that isn't, in my complete defenselessness. My safety is already fully established. Why would I hold on to that which is mistaken, missed, nothingness? So the macro is the micro, the universal is the specific. As we know, be here, be real. As we know, we are alive. Check. Conscious. Check. Intelligent. Check. And loving. Right here as the very substance in form that is this body and its only activity. Can life be seen by so-called human vision? Can the eye of man with breath in his nostrils see mind, intelligence, or love? Is consciousness visible to eyes that seem to see only matter? Indeed, no. It follows then that the substance of this body, which is comprised of living, loving, intelligent consciousness, is invisible to the human sense of vision. Just like an atom is invisible, we need special tools called microscopes to see things that are so small they seem to be invisible to the human eye, and yet they are there. Yet we know that living, loving, conscious mind does exist right here because we are aware of being alive, conscious, intelligent, and loving. True. You are aware of being alive, conscious, aware, here, now. There is this sense of I-ness. Of course, it's not what I thought I was, but I am. And that reality is exactly our fulfillment. From the foregoing, we can perceive that the seemingly invisible substance in form is the body, while the seemingly invisible substance in form is not the body. It is simply a miasmic appearance that seems to conceal the body that is. We seem to see something that isn't there when we are not truly identified. It is this fallacious misconception of body that seems to blind us to the body that is actually present. Once this entirely false sense of body is transcended, and it is, This is not theory. Those who have not transcended, have not walked the full way, have not experienced, and do not practice complete contemplation. They rip themselves off, in other words. That's why few there be that actually know, and that's why we're here. Once this entirely false sense of the body is transcended, because it is, the body that has seemed to be invisible is clearly visible. Would it make sense to know that omniscience, absolute intelligence, acting intelligently would mean that we wouldn't see? Does that sound intelligent? No. Intelligence, acting, being intelligent is reality. Why is this true? It is true because the vision that sees this eternal body is the very same essence, the very same essence that comprises this body. I am both what is seen and the seer. I am that which is looking. It is spirit or consciousness perceiving itself as its own substance in form. This is what it means to see with the eye is single. And when the eye is single, it is seen. And as stated in the Bible, it is this spiritual vision that reveals the whole body to be full of light. Of course, it is full of light because it consists of light. This is normal vision. It doesn't become so from an erroneous position. It is already established in truth and in reality, which is where so many go wrong. It is the case that light is all. That's why the one step of genuine spiritual awakening is the acceptance of what I am, the being and living and knowing recognition of what is. Of course, it is full of light because it consists only of light. This light is your enlightened or illumined consciousness. This body of light is comprised of the living, intelligent, loving consciousness that you genuinely are. And there's never been anything else. You've never been anything else. That was just a dream. Waking up is knowing there's only light. There never was anything else. We don't work out what seems to be the everything else. There was never anything else but light. There's never been anything else but pristine, immaculate consciousness being conscious. As we have said, the substance of this body is invisible to assumptive man. That's why God's ways are insane, crazy, completely not in the realms of understanding of man whose breath is in his nostrils. And the ways of man are complete insanity to those who are awake. Assumptive man sees nonsense, sees things that aren't there, believes himself to be something he isn't, and will generally defend that. The substance of this body is invisible to assumptive man who seems to see materially. Yeah, seems to see is not the same as does. Belief makes real, but not true. But this apparently invisible substance is power, the only power, omnipotence. It is power because it is the presence of omnipotence. Omnipresence, the only thing going on, of course, it's omnipotence. It is the only power because it is the only presence. Only that which is presence and present can be power. Only that which is present is the presence that is power. It is never that which seems to be visible that is power. It is never that which seems to arise in appearances that has power. Rather, it is always the presence of that which seems to be invisible that is power. And as we know, we see the invisible. when our eyes can see, when the lens of living is completely cleared of misperception, we see what is known as invisible to the assumptive man. Rather, it is always the presence of that which seems to be invisible that is power. But this seemingly invisible presence is also indivisible, inseparable. Remember the one substance, consciousness. But this seemingly invisible presence is also indivisible. Indivisibility is such an important conversation that we have so frequently. So, what does indivisible mean? Omnipresent. It is not confined within the outline that delineates the body. Neither is there anything existing as this delineation that excludes the universal presence from the body. We can say that it is indwelling, but we must also perceive that it is the all-dwelling presence. The indwelling, all-dwelling, invisible, indivisible presence is the power that remains forever perfect, as this body right here. It is this invisible presence that eternally maintains and sustains this perfect, changeless substance in form, constantly and eternally. It is this invisible, omnipotent presence that is ever intelligently active, governing the substance it is in perfect order and harmony. Why don't we pause here?